Celeste, thanks for being here. Recently I was talking to some of your colleagues, and we were talking about the importance of having more than one set of eyes on the books. And I know that's sort of a thing that you come at accounting from as well, but you come at it from a slightly different standpoint than I've heard others. Explain that for me.
Well, I basically have a lot of fraud background, so it's called segregation of duties. So it's very important that not one person in the organization does everything. But unfortunately, with the small companies that we deal with, it's usually the case. But I've heard stories, people working for 30, 40 years, the little old grandmother, and they find out that they've been stealing because they've had the opportunity to do so. Nobody's looking over like the checking account. The same person writes the checks, puts the entries in the books, and opens up the bank statement.
So you're saying that part of this sometimes left unchecked, it could go on for that long, like 30 years, you're saying?
Oh, yes. I just read an article in one of my fraud magazines that a small town in Illinois, now this is a government agency, a woman was the controller, and she had stolen millions of dollars, and it was just found by a fluke. One day she wasn't there, and they needed internal financial statements for a meeting, so she called her assistant to prepare them for her. Normally, if she was there, she would just give that assistant the bank statements of what she wanted her to see and would take care of them. But she didn't have anything, so she called the bank, and the bank forwarded her all the bank statements, and instead of 2, there were 3. And she noticed all this money in a third account that she didn't know anything about. So she was very concerned, and in a government agency, the mayor is in the same building as the controller, so she just walked down the hall, and she was very nervous, and she mentioned it to the mayor about this other account. And what happened was the mayor then contacted the FBI, and it took over a year for them to do this investigation. And they came in over a year later and arrested her because she had stolen over her 35-year tenure as the controller of this town. She stole $34 million.
Wow. And
you have to look at the lifestyle of the person. I mean, this person really didn't make a lot of money, but she had like ranches and horses, and like, how did she get this money?
Right.
It's a key indicator that someone doesn't make a lot of money unless they were given a lot of money, inherited, that they would have that lifestyle. But somebody wasn't watching the store.
So let's say, for argument's sake, I know that's a government agency, but let's say it's an SKC client. What could have been done there? If they came here and they were your client, what would you have recommended that could have prevented this?
I would say that you have to segregate your duties. Like, the person who's writing the checks doesn't open the bank rec. Years ago you used to get the actual checks back, but now you could get it online. But the same person shouldn't be doing the same thing. You have to segregate the duties. So someone is checking what basically your work.
Right.
All the time within the organization.
Right, because it's going to be less likely that you're going to have a conspiracy where there are going to be 2 people to do it. Somebody's going to catch it. That there's a problem.
Now, a lot of the small companies, they don't have a lot of personnel to do that. So that's where we can come in, and they could have us do it.
Right.
The bookkeeper, we work with the bookkeeper, then we'll do the bank rec. We could do it right from our office. We don't even have to go to the client. We could just, go online and look and see what's going on. And so it's another set of eyes.
That's great, and that's perfect, right? Because I would imagine a lot of these owners would say, I just don't have the budget for another person, and we're small. But it could happen to them as well, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
There could be thousands of dollars leaving a company.
Absolutely, I've seen it. We've seen it all the time. It's unfortunate, and they are busy running their business. A lot of them don't have the time to do it. Like we would say, the bank statement should go to your house, not to the business.
Right.
But now it's different. Everything is automated. The bookkeeper has access to everything. So I think to behoove them, if they don't have the time, have your accountant that you trust, look over things. So and try to prevent these things.
And I imagine it goes a long way to prevent other things. I was speaking to Karen from your firm, and we talked about quality control. If you have one person looking at those books, you have no quality control, right?
Exactly.
So you guys can fill that role as well.
Exactly. I could tell you a story that, again, this was a new controller that came in, and we were the accountants, and we did the work monthly. And something was misposted. It was just like $200, which is nothing. And I just asked the controller for a copy of the invoice so I could fix it. And he said, okay, I'll get it for you after lunch. So after lunch, I went back into his office, and he said he wasn't there. He had left for the day. So I went back to my office. The next day, I called him. So the more he didn't want to give me this copy of the invoice, the more I wanted it. And finally we looked into it, and we uncovered he was, buying things from Staples or whatever, sending them to his house. He had his company car on the car insurance. So just from a little mistake, you could uncover a fraud very easily.
And what do these companies do if you have one person that manages this and that person leaves? Now what?
Well, that's the idea of you shouldn't have one person that knows everything.
Okay.
That's the unfortunate thing.
Because then there's a whole bunch of catch-up you would have to come in and do, right? To try to learn everything.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely. So it's, I know they say they don't have the time or the money, but if something happens in the end, it would be really money spent.
Well spent.
Well spent.
Yeah. So it's a must, you feel, in a business.
Absolutely.
Celeste, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Good
Appreciate
speaking
it.
to you.
Thank you.